Hello folks, we are at the National Security Action Summit with former Congressman and former U.S. Army Battalion Commander Alan West.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Well, obviously AlanBWest.com, you are out beating the ground and talking to as many folks as you can with the good causes. We're talking radical Islam, we're talking ISIS, we're talking the same enemy we've been fighting somewhat successfully, somewhat unsuccessfully.
Oh, I think we've been fighting them unsuccessfully. And first and foremost, we have not truly identified the ideology. If you're not able to defeat the ideology and confront that, then you're going to have problems. And I would like people to stop saying the radical Islam and just call it Islamofascism, Islamic totalitarianism, or Islamism, because it is rooted in their principle. When you have a president that stands up and says, you know, ISIS is not Islamic, or, you know, at the United Nations General Assembly speech, you know, Islam teaches peace. And understand that George Bush was no different when he said that it was the great religion of peace. So the thing is that we're confusing our own people. Then who are we fighting against? The Amish, the Mennonites, Southern Baptists? I mean, what's going on here? They
haven't attacked anybody lately.
Absolutely, but still, you look at what happened with Nadal Hassan at Fort Hood. We still call it workplace violence. We just had this heinous and barbaric attack against a woman in Moore, Oklahoma, and the intonations out there again. We're going to call it workplace violence when we know the Mr. Nolan, I believe, his Facebook page and some of the things that he was purporting there. So we've got a cultural, domestic jihadist problem, and we have a global jihadist problem, and we're not confronting it properly.
All right, well, let's talk about the global one right now and our current operations in Iraq and Syria, brought about, in my opinion, by the vacuum created when we cut and ran.
No doubt.
What do we do? I mean, the president has decided that he's going to limit it to airstrikes. He's going to react in a way that at least allows him to say he's doing something. Is there any chance he's going to do what is necessary to win, and that's put our troops and our allies on the ground to help the Peshmerga, who are great allies?
Sure.
You know, the whatever Syrian moderates we can find, I'm not convinced that's a big
We don't need to outsource our national security, and that's what I'm very fearful of. When you are talking about $500 million that you want to give to moderate Syrian rebels, at the same time you're pink slipping our own men and women in the United States military, that makes no sense whatsoever. And I think that's one of the things that we should have brought out to the president and not giving him that money. And furthermore, the president needs to come up with a clear and concise strategy. You cannot win any operation from the air alone. I don't think even if you brought back General Billy Mitchell, he would say that, yeah, you could.
He had General George Patton helping him on the ground
as well. Absolutely, he had General Patton helping him out on the ground. So I think that the model we should be looking at is the early days in Afghanistan, where you had about 500 to 600 special operators and CIA operators. Absolutely, they teamed up with the Northern Alliance, that could be the Kurdish Peshmerga army, and within about 90 days, they routed a 70,000-man Taliban army with 5,000 al-Qaeda fighters as well. That's the model. We cannot do this without any ground troops, but I believe that you have a president that in his beady little mind, he thought that he was elected to end wars, but the enemy has a vote, and big time. And he is more so concerned about domestic policy agenda, and he was very comfortable with fooling the American people 2 years ago. Al-Qaeda's on the run, it's been decimated. Well, now we know the truth.
And we're confronting him again. Now, he's tried to differentiate, saying, okay, we decimated Al-Qaeda, core Al-Qaeda, whatever. Yeah. And now we've heard about this ginned-up Khorasan group. Yeah. And we've also got the ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever we call them.
Sure.
Personally, I'm enjoying the Daesh, the Arabic acronym that they don't like. Anything they don't like, I think we should go with. Is there a difference between any of those groups that matters? Or as you said, is it Islamism and we need to call it that and fight it?
Absolutely. And if you really want to be technical, ISIS is nothing more than Al-Qaeda in Iraq reincarnated.
Right. Kicked out.
And they reconstituted based upon the problems that were going on in Syria, and they came right back in January, February. When you look at this made-up Khorasan group, I mean, it is really just an offshoot of Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda in Syria. Right. So you still have that core base of Al-Qaeda. Now it has different splinter groups or what have you. But we're still fighting against Islamofascism. And you can look at Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Jabhat al-Islamiyah, Abu Sayyaf, Boko Haram, Ansar al-Sharia, all of them. So the nomenclature should not mean any difference to us. You know, whether you've got 1st platoon, 2nd platoon, 3rd platoon, or whatever. you have a global jihadist movement, and that's where we need to be focused on strategically.
So the president's not going to do that. He's going to quibble. He's going to euphemize. He's going to do everything he can. Can Congress act? Can Congress get in and give us some kind of declaration, AUMF something?
Congress has to act, and it's interesting because, you know, previous to this, the AUMF by the president, he wanted it to be repealed. He wanted it gotten rid of.
Till he needed it.
Till he needed it, because it provides him, once again, this cover, like we saw in Libya, for him to just go in unilaterally and do whatever. You know, we saw British Prime Minister David Cameron go before the Parliament and make his case. That's what we need to have. And he did an exceptional job doing it. And that is exactly what we need to have here. And the leadership in the House and the Senate needs to force the president to come make his case, because this is still a constitutional republic. We still have co-equal branches of government. The executive branch does not get to go out and declare combat operations, or, as John Kerry said, very significant counterterrorism strategies with many moving parts executed over a long period of time. You and I serve, man, I don't know what the hell that means.
I've never done that. I think I did that, but it's not what it's called.
But there's a lot fewer words and letters. It's called war.
There you go.
And if you're dropping a bomb on someone, that's a war, and it needs to be declared properly through the Congress.
Is that more likely if the Republicans take the Senate?
I would hope it would be more likely, period. But of course, the Democrats, the progressive socialists thereof, are going to do anything they can to shield and cover for this president. And with the very critical midterm election cycle coming up in less than, 40 days, they're not going to do anything like that. So I think that this is even more of a reason to have a legislature that understands the proper roles and responsibilities and the constitutionality of what has to happen.
Do you think if that happens, it's not going to happen before the election, but let's say it does happen early next year in the first term, will that move the president to some sort of action beyond the airstrikes and other things he seems to be comfortable with?
Well, it has to. And really, when you think about these airstrikes, you know, so far in about 2 months, we've done 200 airstrikes. If you're serious in a dedicated air campaign, you know the Air Tasking Order, the ATO, you're running 150 to 200 a day. You know, you're constantly pounding someone. And we're not being effective. When ISIS can still go and attack 60 Kurdish villages in northern Syria and drive them out, when ISIS can still overrun an Iraqi village and execute, 100 plus Iraqi soldiers, these airstrikes are not doing anything as far as effectiveness.
Well, let's hope the elections change things for the better. Let's hope that people listen. You can find the former congressman's website, alanbwest.com, with information about all his activities. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.